Josh Haskell from ABC News, who will moderate the next panel. Josh Haskell is a reporter for ABC 7 Eyewitness News. He joined the ABC 7 team in July 2017. Josh came to ABC 7 from ABC News in New York, which is when I met him, where he worked as a reporter and field producer for 6 years. Most recently, Josh spent 18 months on the 2016 campaign trail, first based in Iowa for the caucuses, and then part of the ABC News team following Hillary Clinton's campaign. I'm sure that many of you have seen him on television covering housing and homeless issues, fires, and a lot of really, really important breaking news for ABC 7. I am so excited that he has agreed to moderate our next panel on homelessness. Josh Haskell, thanks.
Thank you so much for being here and really appreciate this opportunity. And it's, I think, great for all of us, and especially those on the hearing board, to hear from people who are experiencing homelessness, have experienced homelessness, because it's really something that impacts all of our lives. And I think, sadly, people are starting to ask, will we be able to solve this? Because it's just such a complex issue. Can we do this? And so I appreciate having an event like this and Housing is a Human Right for organizing this to restore hope and to strategize and listen so we can work together to solve this. So, and feel free to find me before or after. Always really enjoy doing stories on all the complex issues in this city in Southern California, cover homelessness, multiple times every week. And I'm very open to hearing your different angles and trying to cover all sides, as that's really important to us at Channel 7. And so let's get started with some of our introductions, and we will start the conversation. So some of these people were on the last panel. You already, of course, know Kevin De León. Good to see you. Thank you so much, Council Member, and Senator Ben Allen, State Senator Ben Allen. Of course, Council Member Mike Bonin. And Lindsay Horvath. Haven't interviewed you in a while, but thank you so much for being here of West Hollywood. And Lindsay serves as the mayor of West Hollywood. She's been an advocate for rent control and affordable housing in the city of West Hollywood, as well as the rights of the unhoused. She is a board member of the National League of Cities and a champion for women's rights. So thank you again for being here, and it's always great to have a mayor along with our council members, as 88 cities in LA County. Every city's different, and it's great to have that perspective. So next, I'm going to introduce those who are testifying today.
Sheriff Villanueva is not on the panel?
I'll ask Susie Shannon to respond to that. I have no comment. So first off, Melvin Tunstall, unhoused, Skid Row. Do you mind raising your hand? Thank you, Melvin, for being here. We have Renee Grace Rodriguez, an attorney with formerly unhoused. Thank you, Renee. We have David Bush Lilly, unhoused, Los Angeles. We have Suzette Shaw, not sure if she's not here yet. Sean Morrissey. Sean Morrissey is with Union Station Advocacy. He is the director, and he's formerly unhoused. We have Sam Simbaris. Hey, Sam, thank you for being here, founder, Pathways to Housing. We have Ann Miskey. Thank you, Ann, for being here. And then we have, I believe, two representatives, one from the Midnight Mission, one from People Concern. And I'm not sure if they're here yet, but thanks again. And now that I've introduced everyone, I believe we're going to have our hearing board say something regarding homelessness, and then we will move to those testifying, and then a Q&A, so this should be very interesting. If you want to go first, Ben, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you again for this great coalescence of folks and perspectives. I guess I'm the only person on the panel now from the state government. There's been a major major budget allocation as part of our budget negotiations for homelessness in this year, $8.5 billion in new funding for critically needed homelessness programs. And a lot of that money is going to come down to help the good folks on the panel and others in local government address the homelessness crisis that we have. And so we're all, of course, really hopeful that that funding will be able to put a serious, really help the initiatives and the programs that they're doing in conjunction with some of the folks that are represented here. So once again, a problem that has gotten worse and worse. I represent the communities of Venice and Hollywood and a number of others that have just seen an absolute proliferation of needy folks on the streets. And so I certainly stand ready to assist my friends and partners in local government and also in the advocacy community to do whatever we can to get the resources out to assist with these efforts. So I'm looking forward to the panel discussion today and want to be a real partner with Housing as a Human Right and our local government partners here in this effort.
Thank you so much. Kevin?
Thank you so very much, Josh. Thank you very much to my good friend Benjamin, Alan, and once again, thank you very much, Susie Shannon, for bringing us together. Let me say this very quickly, that homelessness is the moral crisis of our generation. And our generation is going to be judged on how we deal with this humanitarian crisis, unlike anything we've ever experienced before. Yes, we've always had a homelessness population in LA and elsewhere, but nothing like we are experiencing today. I want to put this in context, because if Los Angeles is the epicenter of homelessness nationwide, short for New York City, then the district that I have the honor to represent, District 14, we're in it today, is ground zero. I have more unhoused individuals than any other part of the city or county of Los Angeles. Let me take that a step further. I have more unhoused individuals in CD 14 than the entire homeless populations of the cities of Oakland, Stockton, San Jose, San Diego, Las Vegas, Chicago and Phoenix, Chicago and Houston. And by the way, Houston as well as Chicago and Houston are the third and fourth largest cities in America. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., et cetera, et cetera. That gives you the magnitude of the crisis. And every level of government, being local, state, county, as well as federal, must work in concert with each other. I had a member of Congress say, you know, hey, when are you going to fix that mess that you have there? And I said, well, last time I checked, they're your constituents too. And then last time I checked, HUD, which is a federal governmental agency, has not increased the value of the Section 8 voucher housing, which contributes to homelessness. And that's why I've introduced a plan called A Way Home, which is 25,000 units by the year 2025. It doesn't make a difference if it's building prefabricated modular housing, which I prefer on government land to eliminate land costs and reduce soft costs, or whether it's adaptive reuse, purchasing a building altogether because it's less expensive, it's much more cost effective, or if in fact it's scattered site master leasing throughout the city, throughout the region, so we can do this urgently. This is within the scope of our power at every level of government. Let me just emphasize finally that every human being, again, you heard me say it a few moments ago in the earlier panel, regardless of who you are and where you come from, regardless of the color of your skin, who you love, which God you pray to, and yes, your legal status, everyone deserves a roof over their head. Am I right?
Yep.
Because we're all human beings that deserve dignity and respect. Thank you.
I got one. Thanks. Hard to follow that, Kevin. So let me thanks everybody for being here, and thanks Susie for putting this together, and for so many people on the panel who have made me better and have taught me a lot about this issue and about solutions. You can never get everything 100% right on this issue. You're always in government struggling and trying to be better, and there's times when we are better and there's times when we're not. Josh noted in his introduction that people are beginning to wonder if we can solve this crisis. And the answer is no, unless certain things happen. And just a few of the certain things that need to happen is, one, people need to stop saying no to solutions. every single solution I have proposed in my district, someone has either sued or appealed to stop. Coincidentally enough, they're the people who are most loudly complaining about the problem in many cases. I have had people sue to stop permanent supportive housing. I have had people sue to stop shelter. I have had people appeal to stop motel conversions into Project Homekey. I have people protesting and already hiring lawyers to stop safe camping or tiny home villages. It is a relentless parade of no. And as long as we keep saying no to solutions, this problem is going to get worse. Let's be honest, that there are certain neighborhoods in the city of Los Angeles where people have more resources and more ability to say no. And that automatically creates an equity problem. And we need to move beyond the no. And the moving beyond the no applies to people in homeless services as well. Because it's a little bit like religious wars, where people who are in favor of one solution are as invested in tearing down other solutions as they are in promoting their own. And we need to get past that as well. Gandhi said all religions are true, and in this case, this crisis is so bad, all solutions have some benefit and some merit, and we need to be saying yes to them all. The second thing that we need to do is we need to be paying attention to everybody who is unhoused. So much of our system has, for good reason, been focused on those who are most vulnerable, that we have a system that almost says to people, we're not going to help you because you're not homeless enough. Yep. We have a system that too often is, I make an analogy between cancer. It's a system that often says to people who have been newly diagnosed with say, lung cancer, come back when you're stage 4. Well, if that's the response, chronic homelessness is going to increase. And if you are making people suffer and wait on the streets longer, they are inevitably going to experience more trauma. It is going to be more expensive and more difficult to help them. And we need to be intervening sooner. That means more solutions, and it also means earlier help and intervention. And the third thing is, we need to stop thinking that local officials are going to solve this problem, because this problem ain't going to get solved unless we stop the inflow into homelessness. There's not enough pathways out of homelessness, and they're slow and they're clogged, and a lot of that is on us. But there are too damn many pathways into homelessness, and they are big and they are wide and they are fast. And housing supply, that's on locals. But income inequality, the lack of housing vouchers, people aging out of the foster system without support, people being released from jails and institutions without proper support, domestic violence, racism, like all of these things are bigger than the Los Angeles City Council. And unless we start dealing really structurally, significantly with the inflows, we ain't going to solve this problem. Because no matter how many people we house every day in Los Angeles, whether the interventions are the best ones or not, no matter how many people we house, more people are becoming or returning to homelessness every day, and that's just not sustainable. So until we fix those three things, and I'm sure others as well, we're not going to solve this crisis.
Thanks. Thank you, Mike. I know it's my turn. So I was thinking back to the first conference that I went to on the issue of homelessness, which, not surprisingly, was put on by Susie Shannon, and I'm not going to thank Susie now. I'm going to thank Michael Weinstein, who has given Susie a platform to make her voice heard more loudly. The real issue here is that we don't have enough housing units to put people in. So we house 100 and 107 more fall into homelessness. We have prevention programs, and I see it. Look, I'm from an affluent community. I'm from Santa Monica, and we, until last year, did have funds pretty much to take care of everybody, and we do. But I do see that it is a tremendous effort. But the thing that I learned in my first Susie conference was that if you actually provide supportive housing for people, 91% of them will stay in that housing, right? So this is not a problem that's unsolvable. We just haven't put in the resources, the time, or the attention to solve it. And the other interesting thing that I do agree with is we need more middle-class people involved in these issues, right? They're seeing it from afar, from their cars, from wherever they are. And I think it is important that we make this a real issue, not in the sense of somebody, not a real in-the-streets issue, but a sense that all of us are human beings, and we need to see that in each other. And so when some people look at folks who are unhoused, they don't see that, and we need to make sure they do see that. And I have to say that I don't have a perfect solution for it, but we need to start with the children, because I've done these programs with children, and if you can teach children, their parents will learn. So I think we need to do a program in the schools too around education, that we all are human beings and we owe each other the love and care that we give to our own families.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Lindsay Horvath. I have the honor of serving as the mayor of the city of West Hollywood, and I know my colleague, Councilmember Seppi Shine, was on the past panel, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you, Susie, and thank you, Michael, and thank you, everyone who's made this panel possible. And I know we have a new panelist here, and I hope to get your name when you are able to speak as well. In West Hollywood, we have led with services and care since our incorporation in 1984. We've always dedicated a percentage of our budget to services and care on top of what's been provided by the county. So this whole idea that what's happening now at the county level is radical, to lead with services and care for people, is just not true. It's what we've done ever since we've been a city, and even before then, because we lead with our hearts and compassion. We treat people as people, not problems to be solved. And our approach to homelessness in our community is intersectional. We have to look at it from the many layers, the very many complex layers that contribute to what has now become an epidemic throughout the region. And most importantly, we need to meet people where they are, rather than expecting to create some centralized hub of services that people have to come to. We need to bring our care, our resources, and our expertise to people wherever they are. When people are met with those resources, it's amazing what sort of transformational opportunities can happen, but we have to reach them. We can't expect people who are struggling already to find their way through what can often be an unintelligible system to find those resources and answers themselves. We, as I said, lead with care. We partner with community-based organizations to directly meet people on the street with street teams that go out and connect with people directly, providing them the services and access that the city provides with any number of partnering organizations, and that's housing all the way to addiction services, mental health services, many issues that we're able to address, and we partner with a variety of organizations to do that. For issues of community safety, we lead with clinically trained social workers that we as a city pay for to meet those moments with people who are going to get people into care and support, rather than jailing them and creating a criminal record for people simply for the tragedy of being homeless. And unfortunately, we have heard from our sheriff that the solution that he provides is placing people who, but for their circumstances, must now go to jail and being criminalized simply for being homeless. And that's simply not only wrong, it's immoral. But what we also need to do is help people stay in the housing that they can afford and prevent people from falling into homelessness. And so we also have a program where we provide folks with up to $1,000 a month in helping them with rental assistance to keep people in the housing that they're already in. This is a program that we offer in the city on top of the resources that are offered by the county. And it's a partnership that has to happen, but we've been able to pilot a lot of different different and innovative approaches in our city. We're 1.9 square miles and 36,000 people, so there are some things we're able to experiment with, some things that we've gotten wrong that we're now able to get right with new approaches. And I think that's, that kind of innovation, that kind of creativity is possible not only in our community, but in the broader region, because we're working with partnering organizations that already exist here. So all of the solutions that we need are already in our communities. It's about giving the access, the resources, and most importantly, empowering the voices in our community that are already doing this work. Top-down answers are not going to work. We need a bottom-up approach where we meet people where they are, we listen to the communities, we listen to what they need, and go from there. So that's why I'm excited to be here today, to hear from our experts, to learn from each of you, and be a partner in the work that you're doing going forward. Thank you very much.
So right now it's time for our question and answer. Anyone on the hearing board want to start?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in very quickly.
Go for it, Councilmember.
Just an open-ended question for all those in the panel here today. And thank you very much for your amazing testimony and the courage that you have shown all of us and everyone here about your own personal stories. Sam, you know, Ann, as well as Sean and all. If you're unhoused or homeless or a person experiencing homelessness, however we want to define it, potato, by definition, you have no house. You have no roof. Whether you're mentally ill, whether you have an addiction, whether you're there for economic reasons, whatever circumstance, whatever trauma, you know, put you on the streets, or it was a system in itself, right? Whatever the factors is, you don't have a roof over your head. And I think that's the critical component here. Because we talk about outreach, LASA, we had a long hearing today about it, we talk about all these other components, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's about housing and how we don't define if you have an addiction, you have to be clean and sober, and that's the high bar you have to reach, presuming to your point that we have a system that's set up for mental health and addiction. I was just talking with my colleague here, for those who are perceived to be okay, you know, when it comes to the issue of accessing a marriage family therapist or issues that you're dealing with your children, if you have Kaiser, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, HealthNet, it's still an amazing challenge. So when we're dealing with our communities who are living on the streets, it's almost nearly impossible. So what I want to hear is your input with regards to the issue of housing for our homeless community and what we in government, the state and local level, can do. I'm hearing this Byzantine bureaucratic process. We heard it earlier from Michael Weinstein about how we ourselves make it much more difficult. This is not, by the way, a red county or a red state, where if you have politicians who say, we're not going to invest in you because we believe what you've done is sinful. And as a result, God is paying you're paying the consequences. And therefore, at least you know why they're thinking, what they're doing. You don't justify it or agree. It's as this is a democratic city, county, and state. And still we have the deep-rooted dysfunctions that are human-made. So what is it that we can do on the issue of housing to expedite it, to accelerate it? Not in 5 years, not in 10 years, but now. Both short-term as well as long-term.
Can I answer that?
Sure, through Josh.
Yeah.
I'll give you the quick answer that I'm working with West Valley Homes. Yes, it's a nonprofit that we provide survival equipment and water and food to encampments out on the street, is particularly in the Canoga Park, Chatsworth community where the homeless are vilified. And one of the reasons why, I'm out and I'm talking to people who are in the encampments, and I'm going to tell you right now, when we can't bring a pet with us that has kept us safe on the street because you won't let dogs in. When you want to put us at the Travel Lodge with basically a punitive nonprofit who claims to be doing good work when they say you can only dry yourself off with paper towels and you can't have a real towel, and then they have bed checks at 10 o'clock at night. Who the heck wants to go into that shelter system when you're treated like you are a criminal? That's one of the biggest problems that we face, and you as the elected need to put that oversight into place to know that these nonprofits are not treating us like we're a bunch of criminals. That's one of the key things that keeps so many people out, and you don't have enough units that allow families to come in, boyfriend, girlfriend that come in, girlfriend, whatever the case may be. I'm going to tell you right now, in my community, in John Lee's district, the promotion is simply religious foundations, which are anti-LGBTQI. I am not welcomed in their shelters. They say I'm welcomed, but I can guarantee you the way I'm treated and the way girls that I sponsor have been treated in there, you need the oversight that the dignity is restored to the people who are being serviced. Otherwise, they're not going to come into shelter. I'm safer on the street than in these bullshit programs.
Well said. Well said. May I go? I'll be brief.
Go for it.
I just wanted to say two things. Listen to the clients, as I wanted to say earlier, shelter aware. She's talking about shelter awareness. We're not shelter resistant. The problem is, and we're not housing resistant. Even those of us at Echo Park, we built a shelter there. We were serving the community. And the city didn't want to listen to us. It didn't want to cooperate with us. It wanted to, the councilman in that district wanted to cover over the rest of the park with disorder and blame it on those of us in that section of the park that was creating order. You need to hear in these programs, the people in them need to have more say on how they're run, because these staffs, especially these low-paid, untrained, suffering people come to these, that they hire to run these programs, look at us, and the worst thing we're hearing, well, you're getting it for free. It's a lie. Mr. De León, we're paying for it every day with depression, with suicides, with drug overdoses. There are and here's another solution we need. We need immediately for the county mental health department to step in, and we need LASA to demand all of their contractors track every single person who leaves a shelter, whether they were evicted or left voluntarily. We don't even have the raw numbers on that. We don't have the raw numbers of how many 911 calls they've had at the Grand Hotel. And we're spending millions to put people in these things. We're actually, our research, working with UCLA and UTAC, the homeless agency, we're looking at maybe 200, 300, 400 times more likely to fall into serious depression, more likely to have a drug overdose, more likely to attempt suicide in a shelter, especially these room key things where they isolate you and treat you like you're in a prison, than if you're on the sidewalk. This is a horror, and we need to demand better tracking and data. We need to know every 911 call that comes to a shelter. Okay? We need to know every suicide attempt, every drug overdose, because they're hiding that.
Thank you. And before Sam goes, I need to run because I'm doing a story on this hearing, but Susie's going to take over and do the Q&A. So thank you so much for having me.
I do want to really thank Josh Haskell and
Josh,
and also Beverly White. I think that we are always trying to get the media to focus on these issues in a way that we're framing them, and they both came and spent their day today to make sure that that happened. So we do want to point that out. Are there any questions on the panel? Lindsay Horvath.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Susie. And Melvin, Sam, Renee, David, Anne, Sean, Suzette, thank you for the courage that you have to be here, to be real and raw and sharing your stories and your passion on this issue. It's nice to meet you, and I hope that this is just the first of many meetings. I think about the work that we do, and if we are able to serve those who are most vulnerable, most at risk, and put them in the center of our work, that everyone will then be served by the work that is done. And so I think it's sort of fitting that we have here Suzette and Renee, who have shared such really important experiences, the trauma that you have experienced, the violence that you have experienced, and how it begets everything else that you experienced is not lost on me, and I hear that very powerfully. And being women, people of color, LGBT, these are the people who are most at risk, and we often create systems that are modeled after male standards, cis male standards, and so I wanted to hear a little bit more from you about how services can be cultivated in a culturally competent way to serve your unique experiences, and how you might advise us to think differently and more diversely about how we can be of service to people who are seeking service.
Mind if I speak? Thank you. May I call you Lindsay?
Yes, please.
Great. Lindsay, thank you for that. I want to say that, you know, from what I understand, so I was doing some volunteer work with First Lady Garcetti a couple of years ago, and I remember going to an event and someone saying that the city county had started recognizing the needs of DV survivors about 5 years prior, and this was like a couple of years ago. So basically within the last decade, we've only really started to really actually recognize the issues of DV and women displaced into the streets. So, for instance, for myself, when I came to Skid Row from a women's safe house in 2012, John Kelly, who's now retired from LA Mission, he brought me here, but what they were finding that there were more and more women fleeing to the streets, and they had nowhere to put them. And so this is before the CES coordinated entry system, right? So what I remember hearing John Kelly say over the years that it would take him 2 to 3 days to find a bed for a man, and that same bed for a woman would take a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. And so I was one of many women who ended up in a bed on the backside of a men's program, a veteran men's program. And the dudes would let us know, our dollars run this SHIT up in here, yeah? So, like, we get to run whatever is happening up in here. And so this is then how basically the long story short of history in Skid Row, and why now we have an overabundance of women, unaccompanied women who have been displaced into poverty and homelessness, who also run the intersectionality of domestic violence and trauma survivors, including myself. So SB 678 is a bill that recognizes the fact that we have 53,000 women in our state alone who are unaccompanied survivors, women living on the streets, women who are walking this world alone. And I'll tell you this, just to finish up. When I first got my mental health diagnosis at DMH when I first came to Skid Row, my mental health social worker with her master's from an Ivy League school, she gave me, after doing a bunch of testing, she gave me my diagnosis there at the front window. And I went and I sat in the lobby with it. And there was a word on there, labile, L-A-B-I-L-E, and I'd never seen the word before. I went up to the window, and with the plexiglass in between us, I leaned down and I asked her, what does this word mean? And she said, basically, you're a drama queen. And, ooh, it hit me right here in my gut. Because even though I didn't know what the word meant, I thought, ooh, she doesn't like me, she's not gonna help me. And I'm absolutely right. It took me over 2, maybe 3 years to get her removed from my caseload, even though I went through all the proper paperwork within the county several times over. But the system, her coworkers, her colleagues, her supervisor, I met with all of them. I was the problem, not her. They didn't want to ruin her record, but it was okay to ruin me. And what I would later learn was that that word meant that I go from one extreme to the other. That, to me, in essence, is a trauma survivor. So if you're trying to show humility and compassion and meet someone where they're at, you would say, you've been through a lot, and I want to help you. Will you please trust me to help you? And then you will do the work to build that trust. That's where the system is missing. Thank you.
Okay, one last question. Councilmember Mayor Himmelrich, sorry.
Whatever my name is. It doesn't matter. Thank you. I want to thank you all for being here and how moving your testimony has been. It really has made a difference, I think, to all of us. But my question is pretty boring, sorry, but important, and that is, do you all have any ideas about how we can increase the production of housing so that we can actually end homelessness?
Yeah, we have a 17.5% commercial vacancy rate in this city in some very beautiful high-rises that could very easily be converted into housing, single units, shared kitchen areas that people could get into right away. That's a quick conversion, but why don't we do that? Because those buildings are owned by very wealthy people who pay a lot of campaign dollars to the right people so that legislation doesn't happen, and that needs to change.
And the city county owns a lot of land that they need to use.
I'm all for that, yeah.
I also believe that you should put the cream of the crop first, okay? In the home, you start with the cream of the crop. The dope fiends, they go last. They in the back door, they go last. But the cream of the crop, people that got a driver's license, such as myself, people got, the cream of the crop stuff. You know what I mean? Something that show your credentials. You understand? Who got a bank account or something. You know what I mean? Show me something, okay, to show that you are a cream of the crop material. Therefore, we will get you a place.
I think the root of the problem is this, the public housing that was decimated 40 years ago, we never built it back, so the question is how. And, I don't know that there's a conversation at the federal level, but it has to be a massive kind of solution. The places that have solved it have had coalitions, faith community, business community, and government, but government has to be central to this. One of the things that strikes me about all of these meetings is that it's not an accident that Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, New York, all the big cities, the bustling, big boom economic systems are doing extremely well. And we don't tie together the fact that a very high economy is producing homelessness through displacement all the time. Those things are absolutely correlated. And yet we have meetings all the time about substance abuse and homelessness. I've never been to one meeting about real estate greed, avarice, insatiable need for profit. And there's many fewer people on that 1%. I mean, it's a smaller problem. Why don't we solve that? It would solve this. Amen. People paying no taxes. Why can't we have a real estate tax at a municipal level or somewhere where every new build also contributes to a supportive housing or a public housing build? Just tie those things together. But it needs a massive, intervention, not under the same homelessness tent. We have to bring in the industries that are benefiting from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
It's possible.
I would say other things, inclusionary housing, zoning, obviously, but I think one of the big thing is to any housing, supportive housing, affordable, should be by right. And again, it takes the pressure off of elected officials and all of the folks who are screaming and yelling at you, and takes that away. And so that's where the state and the feds can come in to say, no, I'm sorry, it is by right that we do this. And the other thing I'll just add to that is we need to really push Congress to get universal vouchers, increase the value of those vouchers so we can go out and get scattered site apartments, because in many ways that's the best solution for people. So I think it's a variety of things to do, and we can do it, but we need, again, everybody to come together and make these things happen.
Susie, can I add one thing too? Is largely we have two mayors of two wonderful cities here, West Hollywood and Santa Monica. Myself, representing the largest homeless community in the United States of America, here in CD14, City of LA. We've had a couple of state senators here, good friends, Ben and Henry, and my friend Miguel Santiago on the Assembly. But largely untouched in this debate, this topic, are the members of Congress. And I've said time and time again, you can debate about the framers of democracy all you want. in the House of Representatives, but that doesn't pay the rent at the end of the day. And that's why they have to be engaged, and we're not talking about members in Indiana or Louisiana or Texas. We're talking about our own, which we have the largest congressional delegation in the United States of America. HUD is part of the federal government, the executive branch, and they have not yet increased the value of voucher aid housing in the most immediate way of housing folks, short of capital costs. You need land costs, architectural fees, designs, mechanical engineering, and so forth, is scattered site housing because of all the vacancies that we currently exist today, that we could easily move folks from the streets into apartment housing, within the next few months if we increase that value rate. But I just want, Section 8, I just want to say we need our partners in Washington, D.C. to start doing their work in the U.S. Senate and in the House of Representatives.
Yes. And if I can just add a slight piece, what I think we can do locally is we can create some funding to incentivize landlords, because what we found, we work with over 200 landlords and we haven't lost any of them. And we house some of the most vulnerable people in their apartments. But because we have some incentives and because we provide really excellent service, they love us. Because if they have a normal tenant that causes a problem, they have nowhere to go but the courts. In this case, they can come to us. So we need also locally more that we can offer landlords in the county.
Can I just say that you all, and I know I'm being very broad stroke with that, so just, pardon me. But I just noticed that in the years that I've lived here in LA, that developers seem to be very much in bed with elected officials. And with that said, it seems like they get a lot of tax incentives, like to build in CD14, and never really held accountable to the needs of really poverty and homelessness. And maybe that's because of the linkage fee, which maybe that needs to be re-examined.
Yeah, I think, and just by the way, for your information, I just got here 6 months ago, okay? So
Pardon?
I just got here 6 months ago.
I got you, bro, I got you. I know who you are.
I just want to make sure. Yeah. The linkage fee, the TFAR, all these very complex formulas, or just that, they're very complex in terms of market incentives for affordability. Why don't we just make it simple and elegant and say inclusionary? And this is the percentage here. It's simple, it's straightforward. The developer himself, herself knows exactly what you expect from them if you're gonna do mixed, affordable housing. Then that's separate from the 100% affordable housing. But we make it overly cumbersome and complex. And always, at least it's been my experience, you may have much more experience than I do, but when you sit down and negotiate across the table, it's always like, it just doesn't pencil out for us. We can't do it. It doesn't pencil out. But we have no access to their numbers across the table. So we have no clue, if we're in a position of strength in terms of bargaining and negotiating for affordability. It is absolute lunacy in local government, from my experience in this short term, of how this has been going on for years, if not decades. And this is what you get as a result. You get a supercharged, on steroids, market-driven, where you have such a surplus of vacancies, yet you have such a surplus of people living on the streets today.
So look,
but with that said, isn't it ironic that they want to come and build in Skid Row, but yet with all these surpluses that they have, there's no vacancy for a Suzette Shaw to go and live in one of their surplus buildings? Isn't that ironic? Because you need us to do the negotiating then. Because I tell you, I can negotiate that for you.
She's got it. I say so. I am a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I've negotiated these. I've negotiated with developers, but here's the problem. When you do a 20% affordable project, even 20%, and area median income means half the people are above and half the people are below, what that means is the 20% is for those people, 80% is not for those people, right? And that is a big hole. I truly believe, and I've looked at this issue for a long time, inclusionary is a Band-Aid. 100% affordable housing on government-owned land where everything is deed restricted. I mean, when I say affordable, 100% deed restricted housing to keep the rents where they're predictable for the homeowners, look, Metro for years was selling its land for market value. We could have had that. It is our land. These are taxpayer dollars. We own the land, and if we build on our land, it costs us half as much. Half the cost of these things is in land value. The final thing is that we can negotiate with the federal government, I know because I personally did it, for voucher levels. So you can go to them. We got enhanced level vouchers because Santa Monica was expensive. You should be able to get it in other areas, West Hollywood. You just have to talk to people, but you have to be willing to fly to Washington and talk to HUD. You have to be willing to fly to Sacramento and talk to folks. And most of all, I think we should be not allowing our electeds to take money from real estate developers who are them owned.
Thank you.
Let me know when you're going and I'll go with you.
Can I just make one comment as well? Be careful with those land trusts and having, because the tradition is ghettoizing those areas. Everybody knows what that community consists of, who are the people in that community, and it becomes a real problem. We did away with the projects a long time ago. Let's not go back to them.
Well, so I think the land trusts are something that work in some, it wouldn't work for us because of our high land costs, but I know that they have a working one in Koreatown in areas with lower land costs. I think land trusts can work, but everybody who's in them has to understand that there's no upside at the end. In other words, you aren't building equity really in a land trust, you're building community. If people, and this is part of the problem with single family homes and the things we talked about the last time, and that's something I haven't figured out yet. But the one thing I do think we need to start figuring out is whether we should only allow people to sell homes, real homes, to natural people and not to corporations.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, we are literally going to lose our microphones because our AV team, who has I'm so thankful has stayed this long, was supposed to start breaking down, and they have a team here. So with that, I want to thank everyone for staying as long as you have, for our panelists, and for the people who came to testify today. We're going to do a quick group photo right in front here, so just stand right there, and the photographer here is going to take a photo. Thank you very much. It's been a great end to the day.